Everyone knows someone who received the same recommendation after the age of 60. You need to cut back on salt. And the person cuts. Follow the instructions. Do what was asked. But then something happens that almost no one talks about. The food starts to look different, less vibrant, less delicious. And gradually, eating ceases to be a pleasure. Then a question arose that I couldn't stop thinking about. Is there a way to reduce some of the salt without making the food taste like cardboard? Stay until the end, because the result on the 30th. I didn't expect it. Have you ever noticed that as the years go by, food seems to change flavor, not the food itself, you? There's an explanation for that. With aging, taste buds lose some of their sensitivity. The sense of smell, which is responsible for much of what we perceive as taste, also becomes less acute. And the result is that the same dish that once tasted good now seems to be missing something. And what do many people do without even realizing it? Add more salt. Not out of malice, not out of carelessness, but because the body craves it. Because it seems that without that extra spice, food is bland. And there are people who go the other way, cut back on salt, follow medical advice. But then the food really becomes bland. And so begins a silent cycle that few people name, but many people live through. I used to enjoy eating more. I heard this phrase from a 67-year-old woman during a casual conversation about food. She wasn't complaining. She was just noting it. As if it were natural, as if it were inevitable. And that stuck in my head, because maybe the problem isn't age. Perhaps the problem isn't high blood pressure. Perhaps the problem isn't even the salt. Perhaps the problem is that no one has ever properly explained how flavor works. And that's exactly what this video is going to do. You know when you taste a broth and it seems like it has layers? That's umami. And the compound responsible for much of this sensation has a name, monosodium glutamate. Or simply, MSG. Now I need to stop here for a second. Because when I say MSG, I know what's going on in a lot of people's heads. That which is harmful, that which they put in Chinese restaurants. That which gives you a headache, and I understand. This story circulated for decades. But science investigated, rigorously, with repetition, with control groups. And what research shows today, quite consistently, is that MSG, used in normal cooking amounts, does not have adverse effects on the general population. In fact, he owns a property that very few people know about. It contains less sodium than regular salt. Table salt contains approximately 39% sodium. MSG contains approximately 12%. This means that by using the combination of the two, it's possible to reduce the total amount of sodium in a dish, without losing and in some cases even gaining flavor. But does this work in practice? Does someone over 60 notice a difference? Does it really change anything about the pleasure of eating? That's what I wanted to find out. A simple experiment, just like real life works. For 30 days, the menu of a person over 60 years old was kept exactly the same foods, the same schedules, the same way of preparing them. The only thing that changed was the seasoning. In half of the meals, salt was used in the traditional way. In the other half, some of the salt was replaced with a smaller combination of salt and MSG. The person eating didn't know which was which. No label. No warning. No suggestion. Just the dish and the experience. And I wanted to know something very simple. Would that person notice a difference? And if she realized, how would she feel? Rice and beans, vegetable soup, grilled chicken, scrambled eggs, plain pasta, everyday food. The food that most people over 60 eat every week. Nothing exotic, nothing sophisticated. Because the goal wasn't to impress with a restaurant-quality dish. The goal was to discover if it was possible to make everyday food more enjoyable. No exaggeration, no promises, no miracles. Just one honest question. Is it possible to eat less salt and still enjoy flavorful food? The first week was almost without any reaction, normal comments, nothing remarkable. It's delicious, it's good, normal. But around the second week, something started to change, not dramatically, not obviously. It was subtle, the way important things usually are. During a Wednesday lunch, after some vegetable soup, a comment came that I wasn't expecting. This soup was different today. It was more complete. I didn't say anything. I just wrote it down. The next day, the same dish. Prepared in the traditional way, with just salt. And the comment was different. It was good. But it felt like something was missing. The person didn't know what had changed. I didn't know what MSG was. I didn't know there was an experiment going on. She only knew what she felt. And what she was feeling was telling me something. In the third week, the comments became more frequent. This chicken tasted better today. That rice looked bland. I don't know what you put in that soup, but it was very good. And at no point did the person ask for more salt. That caught my attention. Because normally, when the salt supply is reduced, the first instinct is to grab the salt shaker. But in meals with the combination of salt and MSG, this simply did not happen. The dish looked complete just as it was . And then came the fourth week. And it was that week that something happened that changed the way I see this conversation about food and aging. But I'll tell you about that in a little while. Because first, I need to show you the comparative results. And they are more interesting than I imagined. Of the meals prepared with the combination of salt and MSG, the vast majority received spontaneous positive comments, without anyone asking, without anyone prompting them. Of the meals prepared with only reduced salt, most went unnoticed. Or with that neutral comment that everyone knows, it's okay. Which in practice means it's edible. But it's not special. And there is a huge difference between food that nourishes and food that gives pleasure. Especially when you're over 60. Especially when your relationship with the table changed. Especially when eating alone or with family has become a moment that you either look forward to, or you just go through the motions. And around the 2/3 mark of this video, I want to ask you something small. If this content makes sense to you, if you recognized yourself in any of the phrases I've said so far, leave a like now. Not because of the like itself, but that tells me that this type of content is worth continuing to create. And if you know someone who was advised to cut back on salt and was left with the feeling that the food lost its appeal, send this video to that person. It might make a difference in ways you can't imagine. Let's move on to the results from day 30. And when the dish was placed on the table, the silence lasted about 3 seconds. Then came the phrase I wasn't expecting. This one is different from yesterday's, I asked. Different how? It seems like something's missing. Yesterday it was more crowded. The person didn't know the name. I didn't have the technical vocabulary for that, but the palate knew. The body knew. And that moment made me understand something that no single piece of data could explain. Flavor isn't just what's on the plate. Flavor is memory, it's expectation, it's presence. And when you spend 30 days eating meals that have depth, that have that feeling of completeness, the contrast is apparent. Not in a dramatic way, honestly. This one seemed more complete. That one seemed boring. 2 simple sentences. They said this without knowing there was an experiment underway, said without knowing what MSG was, said only from the experience of eating. And that's when I realized that the question at the beginning of the video had an answer. Not the answer I was expecting, a better answer. Because the question was never, does MSG replace salt? The question was, is it possible to eat with less sodium and still enjoy your meals? And the answer, in this simple experiment with real food with a real person, was colon try. Not always, not in every dish. Not like a magic formula. Yes, it's possible. And that changes everything. A spice that has existed for over 100 years, naturally present in ripe tomatoes, mushrooms, aged cheeses, and well-cooked meats. A spice that Japanese, Italian, and Chinese cuisine have used for generations without any problem. And when combined with a smaller amount of salt, it can help maintain flavor in dishes with less sodium. Just that. But that, only that, has enormous value when you understand what's at stake. Because what's at stake isn't the seasoning. What's at stake is a person's relationship with food. What's at stake is whether sitting down at the table will be a pleasure or an obligation. The question at stake is whether someone over 60 will eat well because they want to, or only because they need to. And that's something no one should have to give up. Let me tell you something I learned while thinking about this experiment. Flavor never comes from just one ingredient. Flavor is a conversation between elements. The salt enhances. The umami deepens. The temperature opens up the aroma. The texture invites slow chewing. The aroma arrives before the first bite and prepares the brain for pleasure. When one of these elements disappears without warning, the dish loses its balance. And that's what happens when someone cuts out salt all of a sudden without adjusting anything else. The dish becomes unbalanced, not without salt, without harmony. And the good news is that harmony can be learned. Harmony adjusts. Harmony doesn't depend on giving up the pleasure of eating. It depends on understanding that cooking for someone over 60, or cooking for yourself after 60, requires attention to detail that no one taught you. Higher temperatures enhance flavor. Fresh herbs added at the end of preparation impart an aroma that heat does not destroy. A drizzle of good olive oil on top of a finished dish changes the perception of richness without adding sodium. A well-made homemade broth contains natural umami that no industrialized seasoning can completely imitate. These are the real tools. MSG could be one of them, one among many. But the principle is broader than any single ingredient. The principle is this: growing older doesn't have to mean accepting tasteless food. Growing older doesn't have to mean giving up the pleasure of eating. Aging doesn't have to mean that the best flavors are a thing of the past. Perhaps they are waiting for a simple adjustment that no one has dared to make yet. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the type of person I create this content for. Someone who doesn't accept easy answers, who wants to truly understand, who takes quality of life after 60 seriously. So do two things now, please. Hit the like button. It's not out of vanity. It's because the YouTube algorithm only shows this video to more people when viewers indicate that it was worth their time. And this content needs to reach those who need it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's new content every week. No fluff, no empty promises. Just information that makes a real difference in life. And now the question I promised to think about it. If you could recapture one taste you enjoyed when you were younger, what would it be? That dish your mother used to make and it's never been the same since. That party recipe that seemed to have a secret ingredient. That Sunday breakfast that smelled like it filled the whole house. Tell me in the comments. It doesn't have to be long. It can be just one sentence, but tell me. Because these comments help me understand what really matters to you. And it's based on them that I decide what to make for my next video. So your answer isn't just a nice memory. It's a real contribution to what comes next. And speaking of the next video, there's one on the screen right now that I think you'll really like. He answers a question that most people never stop to ask. Go for it. It's worth every minute. Until next time.